Hello and welcome to Top Employers for 2024. I'm Zanele Morrison. Last week we spoke to two executives from the Top Employers Institute and explored what it takes to reach top employer status. This episode allows us to speak to a company that has come out on top, multinational telecoms giant Vodacom, Africa's top employer for 2024. Joining me to explore and engage in this conversation is Matimba Mbungela, the Chief Human Resources Officer at Vodacom Group. Thank you so much for joining me, Matimba.
Yeah.
This is incredible. I know it's 7 years down. Is it as exciting, and what has it taken to get it over and over and over?
Zanele, it's an honor and a privilege being here, and we don't take it for granted as the Vodacom Group. For us, it's been a journey. It is a journey which we pegged for ourselves quite a while ago. And in essence, for us, it's really about how to make sure that we've got a culture and a value proposition that attracts the best out there and also retains the best out there. As I said, it's been a journey. You know, you don't get to run comrades in one day. For those of you who are runners like myself, you actually then set yourself key milestones on what you're gonna do, and you work through that. You commit resources, you commit time, you commit yourself emotionally, mentally, and also then you galvanize the forces. You get people around to believe in the journey and to believe in the ultimate goal, and that's why we are where we are today. People sometimes think it's a magic wand. You do one thing now and next year. No, it's not. And I think it's more important, it's not about just the award. It's really about how our employees across the continent, from Cape to Cairo, so to say, feel about our value proposition. And on a day-to-day basis, make sure that we also have fulfilled customers. You know, we also reached a milestone. I don't know if people know about it, but I think they should know that about a few weeks ago, we also reached a milestone of having more than 200 million customers that we serve across the continent. And that comes with pride, because we know, and we don't take it for granted, we know that our customers believe in our value proposition. And that comes from very proud employees who are nurtured, who are developed on a day-to-day basis, who also believe in the cause. Mm-hmm. And it all comes from our purpose. We are a very purpose-driven organization.
Let's actually unpack that, because there are a number of measures, right, that you are, domains that classify what it takes to be a top employer. Purpose drives that. Yeah. So how have you linked the purpose and then disseminated it across those different domains?
So for us, it's quite simple. And our purpose is probably one of the most compelling. Of course, I'm proud of Vodacom. You know, we connect for a better future. And it's anchored on three key pillars, that of digital society. How do you enable society to be digitally enabled in all the markets we operate? And then the next one being inclusion, and inclusion for all. And how do we make sure that society, wherever we operate, we include them, make sure that, you know, through our product and propositions, we've got inclusion in terms of, you know, digital connectivity, financial inclusion, and then, of course, the last one being planet. So purpose is actually, it drives everything that we do. Of course, we've got our strategy, but we always link back to purpose. So back to our value proposition for employees is that, for instance, when you look at inclusion as an example, we've got a number of levers that top employer will test in terms of how much you are inclusive as an employer of choice. What are the things that you do? So from our gender mainstreaming, gender inclusion, to how we develop people with disabilities. How do we make sure that we've got even much more compelling policies and practices insofar as LGBTQ plus in markets where it's allowed, how that also goes beyond into making sure that fathers are present in the lives of their young ones.
Since you and I have been operating in this industry, inclusion has changed so much.
Of course.
Right? I'm learning even more out of this particular assessment, how inclusion is now starting to even include ways of working, ways of preference of showing up to work. What has that shift meant for Vodacom? And I think it's very much a after COVID shift and a little bit of pre-COVID shift. How have you adjusted to that?
Look, one of the key things that we've had to do, and we're very driven as an organization with targets and KPIs. So we basically embrace and take note of all these evolutions and say for ourselves to be able to meaningfully make a difference and an impact amongst our staff, we actually change it, drill it down to, believe it or not, to KPIs, which says, as an example, you know, talking about markets like South Africa in terms of where LGBTQ plus is actually well embraced compared to other markets where it's a challenge. We go as far as saying, what are the kind of engagement initiatives that we're going to drive a year? We put it down to days, to milestone, put to a project plan, and we say we're going to run so many to make sure that we live by our commitments to make sure that we've got inclusion. So another example which maybe not as well spoken, we've got a target in terms of the number of staff of our workforce who are disabled. And how we've done that, I can even proudly mention the number. In Vodacom SA, it's actually, we say 2% of our staff have to be people with disabilities. Important, that also includes how you enable an environment of people being comfortable to self-declare. Yeah. Have psychological safety, because it's not only about attraction, it's also about you may have a workforce of current staff who may, because remember, sometimes areas like disability, you only look at the physical part, but there are other disabilities which goes beyond the eye. Creating psychological safety for people to come and self-declare, that's one of the things that we actually had to put in place. Yeah. And then over and above that, we have gone through, as part of developing the pipeline, we launched a bursary program for people with disabilities. One of my team members is actually now even he was offered a bursary. He's totally blind, visually impaired, and is a member of the team. Finished his junior degree. We've actually absorbed in the business, a member of our team, and it actually took an investment into how do we actually change ways of working. And another good example is Safaricom in Kenya got an award of being the most inclusive listed company in the Kenya Stock Exchange, in the Nairobi Stock Exchange rather. But if the workplace, if the environment and the culture is not ready to enable thriving employees, a very good example is that we just launched our CARE initiative last year, which basically it's a policy framework across all markets, which talks to how do we support female colleagues with menopause. How do we enable flexibility for menstrual leave for our colleagues in the organization? Yeah, which is important because that's how you enable the environment to make sure that you live by your inclusivity or inclusion objective by just not measuring numbers. The environment has to be supportive.
And I mean, I learned so much. I mean, today I've learned something. Last week when I was talking to the top employer team, they were talking about neurodiversity. Yeah. Blew my mind that being a neurodiverse person myself, that organizations are now thinking about how do we harness the best of somebody with neurodiversity needs. You know, so I'm so tempted to just go down that hole, but I've got to bring myself up because I want to talk about the evolution of AI, because now I look at what AI can do, and again, it's going to be a huge challenge for how employees not only use it, but how we start to look at re-engineering the workforce to balance out what AI does and how employees enhance and keep Vodacom on the edge of growth because of it. Your thoughts on that at this stage?
Yeah, certainly one of those areas which is very new and requires the workplace to actually, or rather employers to responsibly think about what does it mean. One of the key areas, as an example, it's about ethical AI. What does it mean? How do you make sure that you've got the right frameworks to make sure that AI is used responsibly in the world, not only in the workplace? So our business, one of the things that we've done, part of it's a passion of mine in terms of skills development and all that, is we actually are starting to we've started to invest about 18 months, 2 years ago in what we call citizen developers. So what is a citizen developer?
Citizen?
Yeah. So what is a citizen developer? It's basically someone who ordinarily does have the right aptitude to have to be developed into AI type capabilities. In particular, in this case, it's actually data science.
Yeah.
We embark, we say, Zanele, you invited, or we actually put an advert literally and say, would like to have citizen developers. We're going to invest in your time, your journey to develop yourself into an expert in an era that you would not have been. Why is that important? Because remember, when you think about AI, it's about also the displacement of some of the manual activities, and even beyond that, which means that the construct of what a job looks like is going to be different. Our approach then is to say, how do we make sure we've got a current workforce, they're doing these daily activities, their job is somewhat going to change. The best thing to do is enable them with the right investment of capability building so that they've gained the new skills and then can pivot into this new area. So these citizen developers, actually, I just got a very nice email yesterday from colleagues that we've got now in South Africa, or actually in the whole continent, we've got more than 200 citizen developers. These are people who've been retrained into AI capabilities, AI experts in the organization, and they didn't have to leave their jobs. Now they're actually being rechanneled into other areas of the business.
I mean, I think the consistency we spoke about, what you're doing now, I know threads of that happened 15 years ago, right? So when you're doing the right things all the time, you just reinvent how you do the right things all the time. We don't have enough time. It's been an amazing conversation. I can't tell you. Thank you so much for your time.
Much appreciated. It's been a pleasure being here.
And that brings our conversation to a close. A special thank you to my guest, Matimba Mbungela, the Chief Human Resources Officer at Vodacom Group. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. Until next time, from me, Zanele Morrison, it's goodbye for now.